I was struggling trying to get this toy like on my tippy toes, and at that point my great grandfather comes around. Instead of helping me get this toy, he helped himself to me and he started touching me. I was born to immigrant parents. My parents were very young. My mom was 19 and my dad was 23. So it ended up being very toxic in the household, a lot of yelling. I felt like I was always walking on eggshells. We ended up having to separate homes. My parents ended up getting separated and eventually divorced. It was a pretty violent separation. The cops had to be called. I was about 5 or 6 years old when that happened, and I will say that it did leave a lasting scar and impact in my life. We moved into my grandmother's house and she lived with her father, my great grandfather. At that point, things seemed like they were good and everything was going well until one day I was at my cousin's house and I wanted to show her like a new toy that I had gotten. My great grandfather was home, but everyone else was upstairs at my cousin's house. And so I go downstairs and I was probably 7, so I was kind of short and I was struggling trying to get this toy like on my tippy toes. And at that point my great grandfather comes around, and so I thought he was going to help me, but instead of helping me get this toy, he helped himself to me and he started touching me. I completely froze. I was just like in shock because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to respond to it. I just kind of disassociated. I don't know how long it lasted, but I just stayed there frozen until I guess he stopped, and then I ran away back upstairs. That was the beginning of a time that again marked my life for the worst. It happened multiple times a week for almost 3 years. At one point, my grandmother was still working and my mom was working 2 jobs. So the person who was supposed to take care of me alone was my great grandfather. And so that was when it was obviously the worst, because like he had no one interrupting him from doing the things that he was doing to me. It got worse and worse to the point that he did not even care if there was people in the house. There were times that I would be in the shower, and one time he walked in the shower and me while I was in the shower. It's definitely something that like transformed the way that I view myself and the way that I view men and authority figures in general. My teenage years were very tumultuous. They were very rebellious. So I started like smoking and I started taking. I was about 14 when I met this guy and he was 21, and I thought he was like a bad boy. And one day he IMs me and tells me that he was going to pick me up from soccer practice because I used to play soccer. And I said, oh, that's great. I was like really looking forward to like hanging out with him and just talking to him. He picks me up and we start walking. It was a big park, and he just grabs my hand and pulls me down onto the ground in a discreet place, like somewhere like that there's a lot of trees and bushes and stuff like that. And he proceeded to rape me, and like again I froze. Like I just didn't even know what to do, and all I could hear were like the cars behind me. So I just focused on the cars and like just try to get away from that place again and disassociate. And I ended up getting an abortion. And once I had the abortion, which by the way like was facilitated like by my family members, like my mom found out and she didn't talk to me about it. She just said, I made an appointment for you to get an abortion, and that was it. Like we never talked about it. So she didn't know that I was like she didn't know any of these things. Like she just didn't ask. And at that moment I started more than ever before. I started doing more than ever before. I ended up running away at 16 and I didn't go far, but I had to leave my house. After I graduated high school, by the way, I don't even know how I ended up going to my graduation because I was so. At that point, I felt like everything was falling apart. I just needed a break. And so I decided to go to Florida with my dad. One day I was at work and somebody slides in my DMs. It's this guy who's very handsome. He seems to be very educated and eloquent. And I'm like, why does he want to talk to a hot mess like me? We start talking and one thing leads to another. I meet up with him and it turns out to be that he, this entire time, was again like this fixation with like authority figures and wanting authority figures to accept me and to like love me. And so when he told me that he was a and disclosed to me all these things that I didn't know, at that point I was already in too deep. We had already been talking for some time now, and I was so naive. I was so sheltered from like real world situations and scenarios that I knew how heavy the decision was, but it was easy for me to say yes. He convinced me to drop out of college. He told me, he's like, college is always going to be there. Your youth and your body now is only going to be here for a short period of time, so we need to maximize on that. I started working for him and working at a club and selling my body, and this went on for some time until I decided to run away from him because I just didn't want him taking all of my money. And so I ran away from him and I left everything behind. The only thing that I had was my shoes and like the bag that I had for work that night. All of my clothes, my laptop, everything that I owned stayed with him. And I was like, well, if I have to sleep in a car until I find, like, I get money to like rent an apartment, then I'll do that. Eventually I get on my feet a little bit and I move into my apartment in Miami by South Beach. I'm still very lonely. All these things are happening, but I'm still lonely. I don't have a good relationship with my dad. I speak to my mom because like this entire time she was aware of my actions. She was aware of what I was doing. The story of my life is like my parents or my mom, like they know, or the women in my life know that I'm making horrible decisions or that horrible things are happening to me, but somehow it's acceptable and somehow it's okay. So I was never told like, no, Bianca, you shouldn't do this. Like, that's not normal. That's not okay. So I decided to move back to New York, and I was still working at this club, and I was still I used to get a lot because I was just so depressed, so I would black out. And then one night I was on a date and the date went bad. Like, we ended up going our separate ways, but before that, like, we had been a lot. I start walking during this time that I feel someone who is following me, and I curse him out. I have no idea where I was even going, and he comes closer to me and he has a phone in his hand. So I drop the phone and like I drop it out of his hand and it falls on the floor, and he starts cursing me out like, oh, you stupid this, that. And then he puts it even closer to my face. I spit at him and then he punches me in the face and like knocks me out. I'm like on the floor, like basically unconscious, and the only thing that I remember is someone asking me like, are you okay? Are you okay? It was a guy, and he helped me up, and I'm just crying. I'm hysterical. And the night unfolds like very quickly. He offers to take me home, I'm assuming, because we end up in his car. He's asking me for my address. I'm not giving it to him. He ends up taking me to his house, and we end up having, I don't remember anything. And so I wake up the next morning, my face is like swollen. I have like a big black eye, and I start crying. And then I realized that I was naked, and I look at him and I was just like, did we have? And his face turns pale and he lies and he's like, no, we didn't. And I'm like, but you're naked, I'm naked. Like, listen, I don't care. Obviously we had, I need to know if we used protection. And so he lied again, and he was like, yeah, we use protection. And we end up getting into a relationship. 3 weeks after I met him, I started developing flu-like symptoms. So rashes, cold sweats, swollen lymph nodes, fever. 3 times I went to the hospital so that they can see what was happening with me. And all 3 times they sent me home. They said, listen, there's nothing we can do for you. You don't have the flu, you don't have strep. Like, you know, we tested you for pregnancy and chlamydia and gonorrhea. You don't have any of these things. Time goes on. Months later, about June, I again was feeling a little off. I had a yeast infection that would not go away. I go to the doctor. Instead of sending me home right after my initial test, my blood work, they call my number. They sit me down and they say, Bianca, you just tested positive for HIV. I just started disassociating, and all I heard was echoes. So I decide to leave work, and then I go straight to his house and I tell him that I tested positive for HIV. Instead of getting mad, instead of getting angry, he looks at me and says, oh, and continues doing what he's doing. And I was not ready. My mind was blown. And he basically told me that he's I don't want to talk about this negativity. Keep your energy to yourself. That's when I realized he was already very, very sick. He really couldn't gain weight, but I just thought he was a slim person. So I never questioned it. At that point, I was able to see how frail this person was for the first time ever, because he came off so strong. And I knew that he was seeing other women. I knew that he was with other women, but in my mind, we both know that he's HIV positive. He's not going to be with women unprotected. one day, like, he goes on a trip and he comes back and we're intimate and I don't feel well. I end up calling my doctor and I'm like, listen, you know, I don't feel well. What do I do? And she's like, come in right away. Let's get you tested. And I ended up testing positive for chlamydia. So at that point, like, God was like opening my eyes, because I was like, God, I'll leave him if he is spreading HIV. After that, I found out that he had infected like at least like 5 or 6 other women that I know of. And that's kind of like what started my journey with advocacy, because when eventually he ended up getting very sick, he was a public figure, Instagram famous, and just a voice in certain communities. People started posting on his page and on his pictures accusing him of giving other women HIV. And so I was like, I thought I was the only one. Like, this entire time, I'm like, I thought he only intentionally infected me. Eventually, I found or came across a group of women who had already created a support group of his survivors. So they added me into the group, and it was insane. Everything that I learned, everything that they told me, it's just insane. That was actually the first time that I even discussed going to the police about it, because one of his other survivors wanted to press charges on him. And so she asked me to go with her to the police, and we did go to the police. They turned us away. They said that they cannot prosecute HIV cases unless intent is proven. They can't prosecute it. It's different in state by state, but in New York, the laws are very unspecific. So there was no way to prove intent. He never texted us that he intentionally gave it to us or that he knew he had it. He never said it, so we never recorded him. There was nothing that we could do. We ended up going to the FBI to see if they could pick up the case, and they refused us as well. I honestly felt like maybe it was for the best, because I didn't hate him even after all of that. I was just so broken inside to know how many women he had done this to, and really that he never cared about me. My entire life, I've only wanted someone to care about me. I've only wanted to be loved and accepted and not taken advantage of. And here was this man yet again taking advantage of me and just using me for my body and just using me as another victim for him to get this. I don't know why anyone would do that intentionally spread HIV. That's really what broke me the most. I was so sad about that. I wasn't angry. I saw how HIV had blessed me, how it had changed my life, and I became a person that really loved herself and loved life. And I really felt like I had a second opportunity. More than anything, I want people who are HIV positive to know that your life is not over. God still loves you. God still has a plan and purpose for your life. That doesn't change. You are still worthy. You're still breathing. There is a purpose and a plan through all of this. And lo and behold, I met my now partner, my spouse, and we have been together since 2020, and we have a beautiful daughter together. She's 3 years old. She's going to be 4, and they're both HIV negative. And it's honestly the greatest blessing and privilege of my life to love someone, to grow with someone, and to be able to have a child. It's something that I didn't think would ever happen to me, but here we are.